So I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. This is a specific legal update focused for not-for-profit agencies, particularly focusing on preparing and holding your AGMs during COVID-19. There has been some recent changes in legislation, which we will go through, and also given the ability to actually run virtual and hybrid AGMs for yourselves. As always, we are going to be recording this session all the way up to the question and answer part of the presentation, when we will actually open up the phone lines and computer lines, and more than happy to stay on the line and answer any questions that you might have coming out of today's session. Also, if you like to post questions into the chat group as well too, you can certainly do that. We are also watching those questions coming through, and we will get to those throughout the session as we move through today's specific legal updates. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and also recorded, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners accordingly. So let's look at today's agenda. As part of this, we are looking at what we are calling permitted arrangements, and effectively what has come up out of the legislation changes is that the Commonwealth Treasurer has announced temporary amendments to the Corporations Act, which really allows for AGMs to be run entirely online. The changes will be in effect for 6 months, going right through till 6th of November 2020. And during this webinar, what we're going to be covering off is, what does this mean for your AGM? What do you need to tell members, and how should you run your AGM as well? So let's go back and actually just have a look at some of the challenges caused by COVID-19. Some of the challenges many of you would have already really experienced. Some of these questions around social distancing rules. So how can you actually run your AGM and still maintain social distancing requirements? What about the limitations on the number of people coming together? What does that mean? Look, there's a lot of changes even at the moment between states. We're seeing quite a dramatic lockdown measures in Victoria versus Queensland and WA. And we've got agencies joining us from all parts of the country this morning. So some of the challenges is really, when you look at the current challenges caused by COVID-19, there is really the social distancing restrictions imposed by the Australian governments, which may restrict the ability to actually hold an AGM whilst complying with the COVID-19 restrictions. And we'll actually look at some of those and work out ways to actually, for yourselves to actually deal with those as well. Now, also, I just wanted to mention, there are mainly two types of not-for-profit agencies, and I'm talking very broadly here. You get your incorporated associations, but you also get your companies limited by guarantee. The incorporated associations are registered under specific state or territory laws, and the companies limited by guarantee are those registered under the Corporations Act and under ASIC guidelines as well. So with it, when we're looking at this, we are going to focus on the companies limited by guarantee, which is the companies registered under the Corporations Act, but keeping in mind that incorporated associations also have specific state requirements that regulators in the individual states have. And we're going to canvass those to both of these today. Now, the other part of the challenges caused by COVID-19 is this. It's not just the public health challenges that you will need to consider. Even if some of the regulators give you permission to extend information across, extend permission to delay your AGMs, This doesn't actually stop possible action being taken by other people, what we call third parties, in relation to delaying an AGM or holding what we're going to call a hybrid or virtual AGM. And I'll come to what hybrid and virtual AGMs are. We have also just been asked a couple of questions that I will just respond to. All of these materials will be circulated out to all attendees today. And also the recording of this session will also be made publicly available for use as well. With that, agencies should also, and you probably have already considered your rules or constitutions to see if you can hold hybrid or virtual AGMs as well. And some of you may already have this flexibility to do so. Now, virtual AGMs will necessitate the need for voting at AGMs to occur by poll rather than a show of hands. And with what we have now seen is that the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, Commonwealth Treasurer, has made a determination to give flexibility for AGMs to occur for companies. And I'll show you what that looks like. So effectively, this is a copy of the recent legal change. It's called a determination in legal circles. We will send you a copy of this as well too for your own reference. But I'm going to take this apart and show you what we're relying on, what you can see around this, and what you need to consider as part of preparing for your AGMs and looking at holding your AGM as well too. So firstly, just an overview of what this change means. Effectively, on Tuesday, the 5th of May, the Treasurer announced temporary amendments to the Corporations Act, and that effectively covers the companies limited by guarantee around this and registered charities under that particular corporation structure. What this allows companies to do is hold AGMs and other meetings entirely online. And these changes were now in effect, or are in effect, for 6 months until the 6th of November 2020. What this gives your company's ability to do is to provide notice of annual general meetings to members using email, but importantly for only members that have provided an email address to your agency. For others, you will still need to send a letter or postcard. This on the material in the determination actually said you can send a letter or postcard setting out the URL for viewing or downloading the notice and other materials, and I'll come to that in a minute. Also, in terms of holding hybrid or virtual annual general meetings, you can use one or more technologies without attendees being physically present. And the determination also covers the risk of technology failure and meeting in if it is invalid is not actually addressed. But in saying that, you may be able to postpone or have temporary provisions to make the process of adjournment or postpone the meetings relatively inexpensive. So with it, effectively, these are the overview of what the determination is allowed to occur. Now, we've just got a question around this on what happens if in Victoria beyond 6th of November, if we have restrictions of people in restricted gatherings. Effectively, this was the idea of holding hybrid or virtual AGMs to give you the flexibility to allow for this type of AGMs to be conducted, where part of it may be fully virtual, meaning that it might be online, or a hybrid where you might have a mix of both. But I'll come back to that very important question where what happens, and the example is in Victoria, if restrictions are extended beyond the 6th of November, what do we do around that? So let's just go through parts of this just to show you what the new Commonwealth determination says. I'm not going to go through this in, I'm going to say, minutiae of detail, but just draw out the really important parts that you should consider. So effectively, this document is all only of a few pages long in its entirety. We're sort of talking of only about 6 pages in length, which is not long for a determination itself. But effectively, what this allows you to do is covers off provisions about meetings. And effectively, it talks about you allowing AGMs to occur using one or more technologies. And this is important because it may well be that you want to use multiple types of technologies to run AGMs, and it effectively allows you to do that. So you don't have to just use one system. Also, all persons participating in the meeting are taken for all purposes to be present. So when we look at quorums as well too, which is the other important part for your AGMs, obviously you'll need to have a quorum in order for the AGM to run. So Part B gives you that definition around identifying and counting how many people are actually gathered together. And that could be a mix between those people that are present physically or also on a virtual connection or digital connection as well. Part C talks about how votes are taken. And in this case, what they've specifically said is that meetings must be taken by poll and not a show of hands. And again, using the technologies available. You must also give people the opportunity for persons attending the meeting to speak as well too, which you would do, I'm going to say, in real life, if I can use that word. But again, when you look at virtual meetings, you need to give people the ability to speak. And again, the technologies that you use should consider this as well. Also, as part of it, they also suggest that you might want to use proxies as well too for the meeting as well, where a proxy might be appointed using one or more technologies, again, for the purpose of the meeting. But again, from your rule book, you'll need to consider how you manage those proxies and counting for those as well. Now, when we go into Part F, and again, with this, it talks about the notice of the meeting may be given and any other information to be provided with the notice of the meeting, again, can be provided across the different technology platforms. What you do need to look at is the content of the notice and other information. And again, what this really looks at is what agenda items, what material you would actually provide, the link in how to get there. But what's important here, and you might be able to see this little paragraph, it talks about an example, and it's quite clear what the determination was when they say a company has email addresses for some of its members. Under this paragraph, the company could send those members an email setting out the attachments of the information of the meeting along with the link itself. Now, what is also looking at around this is, and something that I have added in my slides further on, is that if you don't have contact email addresses for your members and your details are coming up and your AGM is coming up, then again, what we are suggesting is that you do reach out to your members and get those relevant email addresses as well too. And as part of that, making sure that your membership lists are up to date as well. The contact information is also up to date. And so if you do that, then you'll be able to effectively manage your email correspondence and information as well. The other parts of this really talks about when and how the meeting is to be run. And again, the determination specifies what needs to be done in terms of giving people notice around this. It also specifies that if you have already sent out your AGM notice and information, then you can amend it by under this particular legislation and determination from the Treasurer. So if a notice of the meeting has already been given before the commencement of this publication, then what you can do is at least 7 days before the meeting is held, you can give a fresh notice of the meeting that includes the previous information that I've just mentioned here. So, and again, this is specified in this determination as well. Now, with a there are a couple of questions coming through, and we will get to these, particularly from WA and also New South Wales in relation to specific requirements. One of those questions was around in WA, we are on level 4, moving towards level 5 in October. All members can attend, but can we still send notice of meetings via email instead of letter of note? Under this, you can still do that as well too. With this determination, it is for companies that are registered, as I mentioned, as charities across, or companies limited by guarantee around it, and registered charities as part of that. So you can still actually send out and use this determination to run hybrid or even virtual meetings as well. And we'll come to that in the next few slides. So let me just cover off what we mean by virtual AGMs and hybrid AGMs as well. Now, some of this technology is very new to a lot of people. Using technology and with the challenges that COVID-19 is posing, there is a big growth curve by many people who aren't familiar with technology itself. So it's important that we just clarify what this is. So virtual AGM is basically using an online platform to attend, vote, and ask questions. It is where the entire meeting is effectively held purely online, and there's no other form around it. The hybrid AGM effectively allows members to attend a physical venue or do it through an online platform as well. So hybrid AGMs were permitted under the Corporations Act if it was included in the notice of meetings. So effectively what you've got is the ability to either run a virtual AGM, but also a hybrid AGM as well too. So to answer the question that was just raised about Victoria to start with, what happens in Victoria beyond 6th of November if we have restrictions of number of people to gather? Well, under this, you could effectively either run a fully virtual AGM, or you could also look at running a hybrid AGM where you only limit the number of people attending versus the actual AGM itself. And with that, that may well be that you have just the, I'm going to say, the executive admin people that need to work in a room with spacings and the likes, and I'll come to what that might look like. So you can effectively run those as well. Now, what happens if I've already sent out our AGM notice? And this was, I think, the question leading up from WA as well. If you have already sent out your notice and you want to change the structure, that is, look, we want to move to either a fully virtual or hybrid AGM, then effectively you can, if you have the you can do it by electronic messaging, by email, if the member has provided their relevant details, and also that you put the notice of your agency's AGM also on your website. And it is doing that to make it publicly available as well. What we do suggest is that if you don't have the information of your email contacts, for example, of your members, then it is important that you actually get that information, and you can send those details by email in those circumstances. Now, effectively, there are other rules around this, specifically if you are an incorporated association or a cooperative around that. We will be sending out specific items that, in addition to this, that you do need to consider. But effectively, by general rule, the rules are similar across incorporated associations and also cooperatives as well, based on the different state and territories. Now, what if you have already sent out our AGM? What I've said is, what happens if we've already sent out our AGM notice? Now, if you have already sent it out, it's important that you, as I stress, that you look at, if you do want to change it, to inform your members about it if you've got their email address, and you also publish this on your website as well. And if you don't have it, you should actually reach back out to your members to get it. Now, what to think about for your AGM? Effectively, there are 4 things to actually look at. The first one is whether you want to move to a hybrid or virtual meeting. And with it, if that's the case, then you may want to consider whether to send electronic copies of the notice of meeting in line with the new law. You will need your members' email address. If you do have it, get it from them as well too. And if you don't have it, check it, and it'll be important that you get it and check your current details as well. You may also want to consider whether to bring the date of your AGM forward or push it back in order to be able to rely on the new law. Now, when I say that, you've got through till the 6th of November as part of this determination. Now, with that, you may want to push your AGM notice back. If that's the case, you may want to bring it forward as well too, in order to meet these or use these new requirements as well. And there will be specific rules or constitutional requirements that your own agency may need to consider as part of that. Now, I've put down number 4 around the COVID-19 safe work attendance and requirements. Now, and I've sort of put that as number 4, but then put an arrow to number 1. And the reason being is that you may need to consider, obviously, what location you're based in. What are the current restrictions you have in place? If you're a smaller agency and you're based in Queensland, and we got a call from one agency around this, and there was under half a dozen odd people that were attending, it was fairly easy to run an AGM. However, if you're a larger agency, whether it be in WA, Victoria, where there are changing in lockdown measures as well too, and there are restrictions in place, then you may need to look at, well, what is actually, before considering whether to move to a hybrid or virtual meeting, actually consider, well, what is our current situation at the moment? How many people can we actually have? And it may well be that that's what's driving a hybrid or virtual meeting. Also, what you might need to consider is the safety of running an AGM itself. There are some agencies that have contacted us for legal advice around this and actually asked, well, can we run a hybrid or virtual meeting? Or actually, we're leaning towards a virtual meeting, purely because we don't want even the risk of actually people coming together and congregating in the same space. There are some agencies that have equally turned around and said, even if we do run, and we can, we need to have, obviously, and I'll come to this as part of the recommendations, but we need to have a register of people attending. We need to maintain social distancing and make sure that people maintain social distancing. We need to have adequate PPE equipment and hand sanitizer, for example, on site. We need to ensure that documents that are being handed across, that again, we're taking safe and best practice approach to this. So there are a few things when you look at this that it may well be that it's actually a push to run a virtual meeting or hybrid meeting may well be the way to go for other reasons. So that's why I've put sort of number 4 as part of this and put an arrow back to number 1, because it may actually guide your decisions around this. So as part of our recommendations, and we're going to finish up the slides here and then we can go back to the questions, and happy to stay online and answer any questions that you have. So effectively, recommendations coming out of this are covered in these 2 slides. Effectively, review the need to hold non-essential meetings. Now, your AGM will be one of those. You need to look at your rules and whether you can already do it by electronic means. So under certain rules, like, for example, incorporated associations and churches, or, for example, cooperatives may already have the capability to hold meetings electronically. Where a meeting can't be postponed, you ensure that the meeting venue is large enough for members to attend safely in accordance with social distancing guidelines. So that includes having your attendance registers, making sure that you have your work health and safety and PPE equipment, and ensure that you're meeting your requirements under relevant state laws. One of the other parts that we've included in this is to ensure that your members are kept informed as well too. And this was one of the things that a number of agencies actually missed around this, was to ensure that members are kept informed of any measures. In the past number of webinars, we have looked at staffing requirements and ensuring your staff are kept safe. We're also looked at services and ensuring your clients are kept safe as well too. The other group to actually consider very carefully is actually your members, and ensuring that you keep them informed of what to actually do and how you should actually manage your membership information, and ensure that they are aware of what to actually do, and also what information they may need as part of this AGM that is coming up for your agency as well. Now, also, the other parts that we suggested was carefully consider when your AGM will be scheduled. While the Treasurer's temporary changes to the law are scheduled to expire on the 6th of November, carefully consider running your AGM before this date. And what does this actually mean, and what does this look like? It appears to be the intention of the Treasurer's temporary law changes that companies can either hold a meeting in compliance with their constitution, or also rely on this new, what I've called this new law or determination. One of the things that you do need to consider is obviously, how are people going to use this technology? So it is something that you need to carefully consider. It's all well and good to say, right, yes, we're going to run a virtual AGM and we're going to run a hybrid AGM, but how are people actually going to use this technology? So what we've suggested to agencies is, you may well need to sort of run a test AGM with a smaller group of people if you haven't and you don't have experience in using some of the broadcast technology that is out there as well too. So it is something that you can also, or you need to consider. It also means that, interacting in real time sounds, and I've just said, it sounds really cool, but can it really work? And you need to consider who may be using this technology for bad. One of the things that you do need to carefully consider is also member stacking, board stacking issues as part of this. So with it, apart from whether the technology works as well too, from an agency point of view, what you do need to really consider is what we say is who might be using this technology for bad. We have seen it in not-for-profit agencies where a group of members get together to raise issues, to effectively raise board problems as well too. But again, having a process to manage these issues as well too is something that you do also unfortunately need to consider as well. Now, with it, more than happy to stay online and answer any questions that you might have. I can see that there are a number of questions coming through. As always, if you do have any questions around this, because it is something that we have fielded a lot of questions on and supported agencies from a governance and COVID-19 compliance, legal compliance space as well too. So we can support you in any questions that you have around this. By all means, please contact us on 1300 360 360, or you can email us directly at support@gemba360.com.